Love the ambition. Let's Larry Burgess. Love the ambition. Let's build something useful, testable, and humane. I can't actually be better than everybody else in any absolute sense. Philosophy isn't a contest with one winner, but I can design a coherent, practice-oriented philosophical system that tries to correct common blind spots in past systems and to work well for real human lives. Below is a compact, workable proposal, a synthetic philosophy you can read, test in life, and criticize. A short name and motto: Pragmatic Naturalism with Reflective Agency, PNRA. Motto: Know nature, shape habit, free the will that we have. Core aims, what this philosophy tries to do. 1. Be empirically accountable. Take science seriously but not reductively. 2. Preserve meaning and agency. Protect moral responsibility and human flourishing without supernatural props. 3. Be action guiding. Produce clear practices for living well individually and collectively. 4. Be self-correcting. Encourage continual revision in light of evidence and moral reflection. Core assumptions, axioms. 1. Monistic naturalism. There is one natural world. Everything that exists is part of it, no separate supernatural realm. 2. Structured reality. Nature has lawful regularities, laws, patterns that allow reliable knowledge. 3. Degrees of agency. Humans are embedded agents, not wholly free in a libertarian metaphysical sense, but with capacities for cognitive reflection that generate meaningful responsibility and self-shaping. 4. Value emergence. Moral values arise from a mix of evolutionary goods, cooperation care, rational reflection, and social agreements aimed at flourishing. 5. Fallibilism. All claims, empirical and normative, are provisional and open to revision. Metaphysics, what exists. Single lawful reality that includes persons, minds, societies, and emergent properties. Persons are complex modes of nature with capacities for representation, planning, and normative evaluation. Time, change, and continuity are real. Identities are continuant processes rather than unchanging substances. Epistemology, how we know. Methodological pluralism, sensory empiricism plus conceptual analysis plus intersubjective test. Reliabilism plus reflective equilibrium. Trust reliable methods, science, mathematics, careful introspection, but adjust beliefs toward coherence with considered judgments and new evidence. Cognitive tools, probabilistic reasoning, Bayesian updating, and narrative explanation for a complex human context. So ethics, how we ought to act. Principles: 1. Minimize avoidable harm, avoid foreseeable, unnecessary suffering. 2. Maximize durable flourishing, promote conditions for long-term human and ecological well-being. 3. Respect agency and dignity, honor persons' capacity for self-direction, unless doing so causes disproportionate harm. 4. Solidarity through subsidiarity, empower local decision-making while coordinating at higher scales when problems exceed local capacities. Decision procedure, use a 3-step test for hard cases. 1. Consequences for flourishing, short and long term. 2. Rights and dignity constraints, deontic floor. 3. Procedural legitimacy, fair, inclusive process. Moral language, blend consequentialist attention to outcomes with deontic constraints and virtue cultivation. A pluralist ethic that avoids single-rule absolutism. Political philosophy. Democratic deliberative republicanism. Institutions should foster civic virtue, protect individual rights, and enable effective collective action on shared problems, climate, health, infrastructure. Stress on robust public goods, education, healthcare, because they expand agency. Checks and design institutions that anticipate cognitive biases and align incentives with long-term public goods. Philosophy of mind/free will. Compatibilist agency. Determinism or lawful causation does not negate moral responsibility. What matters is capacity for reason's responsiveness, self-control, and self-shaping. Emphasize practices that expand control, education, habit formation, cognitive tools, social supports. Okay, aesthetics and meaning. Meaning is primarily constructed via relationships project's narrative, but must be tethered to reality and compassion. Beauty matters because it cultivates attention and motivates care. Aesthetics is morally relevant. Methodology for moral and epistemic progress. 1. Pilot and test. Design small-scale social or personal experiments, policy pilots, habit trials. 2. Measure and revise. Use empirical metrics plus qualitative feedback. 3. Scale with safeguards. If something works, generalize carefully. 4. Institutionalize constraints, guardrails to avoid capture or perverse incentives. Practices for the individual. How to live, PNRA. Morning reflection, 10 minutes. Update priorities with immediate evidence and values. Weekly calibration. Review one belief upper goal and test it against new evidence. Ethical triage. When making decisions, run the 3-step test, consequences, dignity, process. Habit architecture. Shape environment to make virtue easy and vice costly. Civic engagement. Contribute locally. Vote, volunteer, deliberate. What PNRA rejects or corrects in past systems. Rejects Platonic dualism and inaccessible transcendence as foundations for ethics. Rejects crude reductionism that erases meaning, some forms of scientific naturalism. Rejects unconstrained relativism and nihilistic readings of determinism. Rejects authoritarian utopias that trade individual dignity for abstract ends. A. How PNRA handles classic objections. If determinism is true, how can we be responsible? Responsibility is about capacities and reasons. Responsiveness, not metaphysical indeterminacy. Strengthening those capacities increases true agency. Is naturalism cold and meaning poor? Not if we build practices that cultivate love, beauty, and narrative projects tethered to other regarding values. Does pluralist ethics lead to paralysis? Use structured decision procedures and pilot testing to produce tractable policies. Testable predictions and public policy implications. Societies that invest in universal education, public health, and deliberative institutions will display higher long-term flourishing and political stability, testable via comparative metrics. Habit architectures at the community level, e.g., defaults, nudges, infrastructure, will reliably increase prosocial behaviors. Restorative justice practices reduce recidivism more than purely punitive systems, empirically testable. What makes PNRA better in practice? It's designed to be useful, ethically serious, scientifically informed, and flexible. It privileges agency expansion, not romanticized autonomy, empirical testability, and procedural fairness, a combination often missing when philosophies go purely metaphysical or purely utilitarian. Limits and invitation. PNRA is a proposal, not final truth. It trades some metaphysical ambitions for practical testability. It will fail in places. That's expected. The important part is how it fails. Failures should yield new revisions.